Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
When things are not going according to plan, what does it take to improve our outcomes? Could the secret be found in our own physical body? Mission Evolution Radio Show is coming to you around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. Joining us from Germany to consider the emotional healing capacity of the human body is Dr. Raja SELVAM. Dr. SELVAM is a licensed clinical psychologist and the author of Practice of Embodying Emotions, a guide for improving cognitive, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. His website, integralsomaticspsychology.com. Dr. SELVAM, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Thank you, Gwilda. I'm so pleased to join you again to have a conversation.
Yeah, it's wonderful being able to reach across the world. I understand you're not in Germany, you're in India, right?
Correct, yeah. I am in India. Yeah.
So we're going to be talking a lot about embodiment. Let's start out by having you define embodiment as we'll be using it here.
Embodiment can mean different things to different people. For me, as a psychologist, embodiment means the ability to have experiences in the body, in particular, the most important experience of emotion, and to be able to tolerate the emotional experience as long as possible. Because of late, science is increasingly confirming that when we block the emotional experience from the body, the brain does not process the situation well. Therefore, for me, embodiment is emotional embodiment. There are, of course, other definitions which we can look at as we go along.
So how do we block emotions from the body? I mean, you would think it's one enchilada there, right?
Yeah. We can create emotions in the brain alone. For example, we can take a neurotransmitter that when it binds to the brain cells can create an emotional experience in the brain. Also, during neurological experiments, during brain surgeries, Penfield, for example, touched different brain cells to create different emotions, just through stimulation of the brain. That is how we can generate emotions in the brain without involving the body very much. However, most of the time, emotion is, because it's an assessment of how some things are affecting us, our well-being, it's best generated in the body as an assessment of what a situation does to us. Is it favorable or not favorable? We can generate it in the brain, and it's sufficient sometimes when it's a situation that is old. We don't have to shake up the body all over again, but most of the time it's through the body. In fact, some emotions, researchers are saying that there are no emotions that are purely brainy, only created in the brain. I tend to be integrative, so I allow for the brain camp and the body camp. But what we do know is that when we block the emotions from the body, then the brain does not work well in processing the situation. I'll give you a simple example. They at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, there's a psychology lab, and they had people wired up, their brains wired up while they did the experiment. They had one group of people bite on a pen so that all the facial muscles could be fixated or paralyzed, kind of. And the other group was not given any inhibition. And they found that people who are processing the same video material that had a high emotional charge, whose faces were blocked by biting on the pen, their brain was not working very well at all. And then after the experiment, they couldn't remember the emotion or the situation or the meanings and behaviors in that situation. So, and there are other experiments that have demonstrated the same. So it's very important. The practical giveaway is that it's very important when you have an emotion to feel it in as much of the body as possible. And you know what happens when we do that? It becomes more bearable. A very difficult emotion like fear of dying, becomes more tolerable when we actually expand it one way or the other to the rest of the body. And it becomes more tolerable, which means that we can stay with the emotion, not block the emotion in the body, which we know increases the ability of the brain to process the emotion.
So if we're have a poker face, if you will, don't let any of our emotions show on our face for whatever reason, is that part of blocking it from the body?
Yeah, it would be. It would be. But in this case, we are actually concealing emotion, as a strategy. So, so it's inhibiting display. It would, of course, lead to the less optimal conditions of processing the emotion in the brain.
Well, if we've ever watched little children, they embody emotion like nobody's business, right? Throw themselves
Yes.
down on the floor and have a tantrum. And, there just seems to be no space between what they feel and how their body is responding. What happens to that natural response by the time we're adults?
We learn to inhibit our emotional responses. Early on, we don't have the ability to inhibit our emotions. And if it's there, we show it on the face. Then we learn from others, in the family, for example. We learn from others. And we also learn that it's perhaps not good for us in terms of consequences to show certain emotions. So we start to inhibit. We learn what emotions are allowed or not allowed in the family, in the culture, etc. For example, women are not learned that they don't show anger, even if they felt it. And men are taught not to show sadness or vulnerability when they have that. So in both situations, they actually compromising the ability of the brain to process the situation in which the emotion is arising.
So when that's going on, is that how we end up being rageful because we weren't ever able to express our rage, or fearful because we weren't ever able to express our fear, and those remain inside of us unprocessed?
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't mean that we have to powerfully express it. There's one thing to express it, and another thing to push the emotion away altogether. That there's a difference.
And so we're kind of, as children, we can't discern that, can we?
No,
It's
we
either
cannot,
all
but
or
we learn.
nothing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Still, we learn from. Children can learn it very quickly. I remember my mother and my sister came to Germany, where I live, and we went on a neighborhood walk, and they love children. And there was a child there, it couldn't have been more than 2 years. And this child had learned to control its face. My mother and sister reached out to it, baby, sweet. And the child, I was amazed to see, showed a poker face. So it learned very early on how that it needs to inhibit the emotions by inhibiting the facial muscles, with strangers. I don't know what it does in the family, but at least with strangers, it was quite controlled.
So it sounds like possibly this is passed down generationally by behavior to behavior, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. We learn it from the culture. We learn it generationally. Yeah, sure.
And so what's the result then? What are we seeing out there as a result of that inhibition?
If emotions are inhibited from the body, then people's brains are not processing the situation well. That's the consequence. In every moment, this is all research that has emerged in the last 25 years in neuroscience, affective and cognitive. In every moment of our lives, it is our emotional state that determines what we pay attention to, what we perceive, what we focus on, what kinds of memories we have, and what the language that we use. All of those things depend on our emotional state. And by emotional state, I don't mean sadness or guilt, etc., which are more differentiated emotions. I'm talking about just feeling bad or good. It is an emotion, to say that I feel bad about an unfavorable situation or I feel good about a favorable situation is to make an emotional statement. And that emotion determines the brain, in which direction it goes, what it pays attention to, what its cognition at the moment, attention, and so on. So emotions are very important. We are learning now after actually pushing away emotion in favor of cognition or meaning making or behavior for a long time. And it actually, for a long time, compromised the therapy that we do and the lives that we lead.
When we've suppressed emotion, does it, and the brain doesn't get to process it, does it then kind of hulk around and get triggered again in a similar circumstances that's not necessarily appropriate?
It does. No, it does. For example, I'm, let's say that I have had a breakup that's painful, and I don't process it to develop some capacity for the emotions that arise, like sadness or feeling abandoned, etc. I push it away, and then what happens as things work out, if it happens again, I get into another relationship, and I'm beginning to sense it's going well, going badly, it triggers the old emotions now because they were not pushed away from the body, and repressed. Now, they're very difficult. I recall the emotion with the memory that it's very difficult to bear the emotion, right? Then I try to push it away again. And when I try to push away emotion, push away emotion, I shut the body down in order to do that, right? Constrict the body, don't breathe it well, or lock the joints. There are so many different ways of doing it. Now, when we do that, it turns out that we also start to shut down the energy in our body. We have.
Well, we're going to have to take a station break, but I really want to pick up on how we shut down the energy in the body on the other side. Dr. Sylvan and I will return very shortly, so don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
The end has come, a night has fallen. I have reached the end of days. What's real is not, reason fails me.
What happens when we shut down our emotions? With us this hour discussing emotional embodiment is Dr. Raja SELVAM. Dr. SELVAM is the author of The Practice of Embodying Emotions, a guide for improving cognitive, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. Dr. SELVAM, just before the break, we were talking about when you shut down emotions from the body, you're also shutting down energy. Would you go into that a little bit for us, please?
I will. We actually shut down different types of energy, and I will elaborate on both. For example, a typical way of depriving the body of the fuel to feel anything is by inhibiting the breath. That's why so often people have bronchial symptoms with grief. When they shut down the breath by inhibiting the lung tissue, we start to have bronchial symptoms. It's a very common psychosomatic symptom of grief. So, of course, when you don't breathe, we don't generate enough biological energy to do different things. So that's one level of energy. But there's also another level of energy. And that level of energy is not very well known in Western psychology, which believes in what I call the one body era. We think that there is only one body, the physical body that goes from the womb to the tomb, and totally ignore all the evidence there is of another body, the subtle body that goes from one life to the next. Even if it did not go from one life to the next, if you do not believe in it, it's there. I mean, people have shocking experiences. They temporarily separate the subtle body from the gross body, and you can actually have the experience. A woman just wrote about it in a book called 9 Days to Eternity. She set herself on fire by the fireplace, and very, very quickly her body was being consumed. And by flames, when she was standing outside her body, she could feel the heat and the burning, smell the burning of the hair, but she was not in pain. So that's subtle body. And there's so much research, on near-death experiences, the perception of the subtle body separate from the gross body or the physical body. And so it turns out that is the body that's the source of all experiences, life. It's called the soul in religions, but it's another body. It's only at the quantum level, subatomic level. So when the body, the womb to the tomb body is in pain, it affects the subtle body, and therefore the subtle body can shut the energy of the subtle body. And very often in chronic fatigue, etc., fibromyalgia, you find really the collapse of the subtle body. That is the primary stimulator of all our experiences, including life, in what I call the gross body. So differences can form at that level, by reducing the level of energy in the subtle body or the distribution of it in the gross body, and all of those are defenses against emotions, ways to cope with very painful experiences.
So are we describing disassociation here, where you're suddenly the fly on the wall and watching what's going on?
I wouldn't call it dissociation. Dissociation, you see, in the dissociation model, they're only talking about one body, right? And the dissociation comes through biochemical changes in the brain of the body, like numbing, etc.
Okay.
But the experience of separating the subtle body from the gross body, you could call it dissociation in a loose sense, but it's not in the technical sense. I wouldn't use it because most people think of dissociation, they think that something is happening in the brain. It might very well be. It's essentially separation of the two bodies, that happens. So you could call it dissociation, but it gets confused with a lot of technical definition of dissociation in the trauma literature that actually believes that we have only one body, which is an error.
So if we have a gross body, that's the one that mom grows in the womb and gives birth to.
Yeah.
We know where that one comes from. But where does the subtle body come from if they aren't one and the same?
The subtle body, the soul, if we look at research on memories people have of the time between two lives, we have answers to that. The soul is a long-term project. It continues to evolve from one life to the next, taking on different gross bodies and different lives for different purposes, to learn new things, to develop the soul, to heal the soul, and so on. Because the souls also get traumatized, but what happens when it is attached to the gross body? So so the subtle bodies are very important, and it all in the research on reincarnation at the University of Virginia also gives good evidence for the presence of another body that goes from one life to the next. So ignoring that is quite damaging to the practice of psychology. Now I have to tell you that in the book, The Practice of Embodying Emotions, my first book on the approach I've developed called integral somatic psychology, I do not talk about the subtle body. So I don't want people to buy the book with the assumption that they would find this there. It's part of my second book that I'm writing. And in the last chapter of the book, the first book, I actually challenged the field of psychology to grow and to get more embodied. Earlier we were talking about the whole idea of embodiment. Another definition of embodiment is that to own all the bodies we have, and we're not, and owning our individual subtle body and its influence and our experience and knowing how to work with it to have the experiences in the gross body to grow. It's like an alchemical container in which the subtle body or the soul is transformed. And that's another level of embodiment. But it doesn't end there. Our embodiment doesn't stop at the individual levels, because we are not just two bodies. We also have two collective bodies. You can think of our body consisting of 4 levels, 2 at the individual level, the individual gross body, individual subtle body, or what is called the physical body and energy body in the West. But we also have collective bodies that we can work with, we can acknowledge. When we do that, we get even more embodied, and we get more resources to do the hard work we have come here to do. That according to the research on memories, people have a life between 2 lives. Is for the purpose of transformation of the soul over the long run.
So help me clarify, what do you mean by collective body? Is it more than one person, or what's a collective body?
Quantum physics tells us that let's start with the physical body, right? The individual gross body, the terminology used to be is. It turns out that there is no boundary between my body and the rest of the universe at the subatomic level or the quantum level. It's on one body. So at one level, my body is the body of the universe. Now, this might sound new agey, it's not. I'm talking about quantum physics. So how do we end up having a strong definition that we are only the gross body, that the boundary of a body ends at the skin? Yeah, it's a neurological marvel. And that neuroscience has also cracked. We know exactly how that comes about. That even though my body at one level is the body of the universe, that I persist in the belief that I'm separate, and my body ends at the skin, right? And or the organs, etc. That we know how we create that neurological illusion of fiction for a certain purpose. I've come here to be an individual body container, so to speak, and a quote unquote, in which I need to grow, to solve the problems that the soul has, or to grow, etc. So there's nothing wrong with it, but in order to grow as a soul, we need to sooner or later understand that our body is more than just the individual gross body or the individual subtle body, that our body is the body of the universe. And the body of the universe has all the resources that the subtle body needs. So when we shut the subtle body down, we also disconnect from the collective. It's like not talking to everybody around.
So if we're like many of us in the West are totally disconnected from the concept, even that there's anything more to us than this flesh suit, is our challenge to reconnect with our physical, emotional, mental, spiritual bodies in order to evolve into a more unified form of the collective body.
uh, we don't have to evolve into a more unified form. We are the collective body. It's about recognizing it, and how do we go about it, right? How do we connect? The disconnection is only limited because we always depend on the collective body. We can't breathe. We need this temperature regulation. So gravity to stay on the planet. So we are entirely and abjectly dependent on the collective body and inseparable from it. But at the level of the individual, if we can do, it seems that we can do things that disconnects us from the collective body to a certain extent, and therein lies the problems. Therein lies the problems, we can know how to connect. For example, by working with the chakras, and mobilizing the subtle body energies, and working with the unpleasant experiences that come up that led to the shutdown of the chakras, we can make our subtle body more open to the collective, to gather resources from it, so we become more integrated. But we are always connected. It's just a matter of knowledge and ignorance and relative disconnection that is enough to cause problems.
So we always have access to it, but our places we've shut down kind of block that access? Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah, we always have access. We will not be alive if we were not connected to the universe. We are, in fact, connected to the universe. But enough defenses can form, disconnection can form, that can make our individual lives very difficult, really difficult. In fact, ultimately, our goal, in Hinduism and Buddhism, for example.
Well, we're going to have to, I'm sorry, we're going to have to pick up on that on the other side of a station break. Okay. Dr. SELVAM and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. We're coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Coming from the stars, one people, one nation, to heal this earth of ours. Our gracious Mother Earth, our Father in the sky. I've been broken, shattered, cast to the wind. I am scattered upon the wind. I've been broken, shattered, cast to the wind. I am scattered upon the wind. I've been broken, shattered, cast to the wind. I am scattered upon the wind.
What do chakras have to do with anything? Our guest this hour is Dr. Raja SELVAM. His website, integralsomaticpsychology.com. So there's the question: what do the chakras have to do with emotional embodiment and connection to the collective?
The chakras are the portals to the collective. The connection between the individual and the collective are governed by the chakras, especially the higher two chakras, the crown chakra and the third eye chakra. And they can shut down if the gross body is having a terrible time. And as it affects the subtle body can shut down, relatively speaking, the crown and the third eye chakras to disconnect us from the resources of the collective. Yeah. So chakras are nothing more than energy transformers, so to speak. They step down the energy as we go down the chakras from the third eye and the crown all the way to the heart and the root and so on and so forth. Yeah. And
so what do the different chakras, do they each represent something different, or is it a matter of starting at the top and working to the bottom till you ground? How does it work?
They have different qualities. You can think of the chakras as providing the 7 layers, corresponding to the 7 chakras. They're also called elements, the substance that that is derived through the different chakras. They call different elements. They have different qualities, and they can be tremendous help in psychological work. For example, the throat chakra with the ether element, when it is actually mobilized and distributed throughout the body, can actually regulate the brain, and make the body more spacious when it is shut down. I've used this a lot in the war trauma courses, free war trauma courses I taught for Ukrainians and Israelis and Palestinians last year, which, by the way, are available to viewers or listeners on my website, for free. And you can give them my website, integralsomaticspsychology.com. There are free courses, war trauma courses, where I show how to use the ether element of the throat chakra to downregulate post-traumatic stress. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And also the navel chakra, the fire element, can be a source of extreme strength. I remember a student who wrote to me saying that a client who could not face the fear of dying from a trauma that she had, which shut her body down and brain down, she said that when she managed to work with the the navel chakra to mobilize the fire element, had enough strength to face the fear of dying, to resolve her post-traumatic stress symptoms. So this is what I say, but when we find a way to add more bodies that even have higher resources, then the work we are doing it is at the individual level, right? It's, the container, the alchemical container is the gross body, right? That we shed at the end of each life. That's where we're doing for the hard work. But when we know and we can tap into the other bodies, the individual subtle body, or even the collective body, then it becomes much more easier to remember who we are on all levels. It makes the journey on this planet much more possible, feasible, and tolerable. And for whatever reason, over time, we have shed the knowledge of who we are, the complex beings we are with multiple levels. And by the way, the collective body is the first level of the collective body. Remember what I said, there are 2 collective bodies. The changing body of the universe, from which our body, neither the subtle or gross, is inseparable, is the source of all things, knowledge and materials for the growth of the individual subtle body and the gross body. But it turns out that there is another collective body. That's the basis of it all. And that body is the unchanging collective body of pure awareness. And in Hinduism and Buddhism, it's the realization that we are that, the unchanging collective body of pure awareness, that leads to the end of suffering. Buddha said that there are 3 sources of suffering. One is the conditioning in the body, right? The other is the reaction to the suffering in the mind. And then the third is the over-identification with the limited bodies that we are. That I'm the individual subtle body, I'm the individual gross body. And then you might ask, then why on earth do we do this hard work? Do we suffer, etc.? And why can't we just having heard Raja SELVAM say that I had this body, why can't I just grasp it and then be free of suffering forever? That is because in order to gain a greater knowledge of all my bodies and use their resources, I need to, as a precondition, a decent capacity to tolerate opposites in the most limited body we have. Yeah, that's the trick. So the reason why one of the reasons why I'm interested in the practice of embodying emotions, is that it gives me a way to use the limited body, the gross body of the individual, the physical body, to develop a greater capacity for opposites in emotional experiences, especially unpleasant emotional experiences, so that I, my ability to grasp that I'm not just this body, from womb to tomb, but I'm also this other body, that goes across lives. But more importantly, I'm ultimately, in every life, if I'm lucky enough, I am the basis of the universe that is unchanging, and it's pure awareness. And this is what is called enlightenment. So for enlightenment, one of the first qualifications is what? A capacity to tolerate opposites in the most limited body we have. And that's why I'm interested in it. Otherwise, I would just hang out in the absolute collective body of pure awareness and not appear even on radio shows such as these, right? So,
Well, there would be an advantage to that. I can see it. Raja, you originally came from India. Is emotional embodiment viewed the same in the East as it is in the West?
emotional embodiment, there are so many different views, even in India, right? Um, you know, some people want to meditate and try to, which regulates emotion cognition, but do not want to work with emotion. That would be a bypass. This is what we would call a spiritual bypass. Yeah. To avoid emotions, because we truly do not, by avoiding emotions, get a full embodiment of all the bodies. We need to embody this body in order to embody the other bodies. Therefore, in India, that the ability to tolerate opposites is very important. And the most limited body we have is very much a requirement for growing. And it is also there in Jungian psychology in the West, which is influenced quite a bit by Eastern thought.
So the energetic levels of the body versus the gross body, where do the chakras fall there? Are they kind of a bridge in between?
Well, there's the gross body, right? There's the gross body. And it turns out that this gross body exists at the gross level of kidneys and skin and head and eyes and even molecules and atoms, all of which we can measure or perceive either through the five senses or through the sophisticated instruments we have developed as a species, right? But this very body, the gross body, also has a subtle level, quantum level, that I cannot measure or perceive, right? So that's the first level, right? Then there is another body, the subtle body or the energy body, right, which goes from one life to the next. That exists only at the subtle or quantum level. Yeah, that's the hierarchy, right? At the individual level. Cool. And then because neither body, my subtle body or the gross body, has a boundary with the rest of the universe, the changing collective body of the universe, right? That I can connect to very easily through the higher chakras because it's structurally that way. Yeah? That's the third level of my body, and then I talked about the final level, which is the unchanging collective body of pure awareness. So those are the four levels of my body. You can think of them as four bodies or four levels of a body, and the chakras connect the individual to the collective.
So where do animals fall in this? Do they have subtle bodies?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yeah. They might not have the same capacities in terms of the brain development, the brains, but then they might have other capacities that we might not, right? So, but certainly they don't have some of the capacities humans have.
But when we get to the subtle levels, you're saying they may have more capacities than we do.
I don't know whether it's a subtle level. It could be on every level, but I don't know. I don't know. I've not thought much about it or read much about it. But animals have souls, right? So.
And a lot of cultures say they don't, but I'm with you. You can't be around one very long and see that they don't have a lot of capacity just because they don't talk. They have a lot going on.
Exactly. I'm on a farm. There are a couple of dogs. I'm more bonded with one dog than the other. Then he comes and has a conversation with me every morning. So, not in the language that I know, but emotionally, he does that. And then when I leave the farm, because I spend 2 months out of the year here, and whenever I leave, it takes some time to bond again when I come. But when I leave, he knows in advance that I'm leaving. He stops eating, and then goes into depression. Even though I spend a lot of time with him trying to talk to him, say that I'm here only for 2 months out of the year, and so on. So I don't know what difference that makes, but how can you say that this animal is not intelligent or doesn't relate?
When we view ourselves as separate, we separate ourselves from the animals and from the planet. Is that fairly damaging?
It is, no? It is. In fact, suffering comes from separation.
Mm.
That's one of the reasons why we continue to suffer throughout our lives, right?
Right.
That we continue to suffer, at least when we have the ability to tolerate the emotions in the gross body. One of the things we have is that we suffer less, right? We work things through, we suffer less.
Well, that's
We are a
working.
little more more
It's
resilient.
it's
Resilient. Not that we don't have fears, but every time we are afraid,
it's got
we're more
time.
resilient.
It's time for a station break. Please stay with us as Dr. SELVAM and I continue to explore the healing power of embodiment. This is Mission Evolution. www.missionevolution.org.
Searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars. One people, one nation, to heal this earth of ours. Ilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow.
Can one heal emotions with the physical body? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Raja Selvam. His website, integralsomaticspsychology.com. Dr. Selvam, what are the first, we're separated, okay? And a lot of us don't have any concept or belief in anything outside of this physical body. What's the first step that a person needs to take to start moving beyond that and healing with the emotional body?
We start with just where we are, what we are aware of, which is the individual physical body or the gross body, the terminology is, and try to expand the emotional experience, let's say fear or sadness, to more places in the body. And there are different ways of doing it, but it could be done, for example, with just the knowledge that it is possible. And there's there is science to it. And by just allowing our awareness to go to more places in the body, the energy can also spread to more places and the emotion can also spread more. For example, if I'm feeling a great deal of fear in my heart, I could say, well, let me see if we can expand the fear from my heart to maybe my lungs. Maybe we can put my hand there. Yeah, maybe I can make a sound of the fear to bring it more into my throat and to my face. It could be as simple as that, but it can get more complicated. That's what the book is about, where I talk about all the different ways in which you can do that. Expansion regulation, I call it. So I would start there. And when I start there, when the body opens up, it no longer has to hide, shut down, then the subtle body will get more embodied in the gross body, right? And when the gross body gets more, the subtle body, and at the same time, the subtle body will open more to the collective body from which all the stimulation comes to stimulate experiences in the body. So we're lining up the bodies, from the bottom up, So we can, yeah. Then perhaps, we could even explore why, what is beyond the body, the collective body, the changing collective body of the universe. it's more possible for me, for example, to use my awareness to sense that my body doesn't end at my skin, and what benefit it brings me, right? And then perhaps the realization that, that my body includes even the unchanging collective body of pure awareness. I'll give you an example, right? The other day I was really distressed. I have a 17-year-old grandnephew, tried to commit suicide. It's quite a shock to us. And then the family is the parents are quite resistant to psychological work or medication, and that's what caused it in the first place. The lack of attunement to the needs of the children led to the psychopathology in the child that could not see any way out when the parents refused the very things that the child needed, like medication or therapy. And then I was telling them we need to at least provide those services now, and they were resisting. And so I was so distraught because I'm quite connected to this child. So that night, I couldn't sleep. So what did I do? I felt bad and frustrated. I just tried to expand that frustration and how bad it felt in my body, the situation, to as much of the body as possible, knowing the techniques that I know. And then I went further and said, remember, I'm also my subtle body. Then I started to feel this emotion as a wave in my body. There are ways to connect the emotion to the subtle body, right? And when I did that, it became even more bearable, and it became more tolerable. And then I said, well, my body doesn't end at the skin. So I allowed my awareness to go beyond my body to include more of the world around me. And then the emotion felt even more regulated. As I was doing this, it's not emotion went away. It became more tolerated. Then I knew exactly what to do the next day, not give up. I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, right? Then at some level, after a while, I want to go to sleep. I said, my body's feeling all these things, I'm not, which is one simple way to identify with the collective body of pure awareness that supports all my bodies, but yet it is unaffected, right? Then I went to sleep. And you know what happened next morning? Synchronicities happened. The nephew who was refusing treatment had left a message that he would actually agree to psychological counseling for the whole family. This is a remarkable change. So, this is the kind of thing that can happen, right, when you include all of the bodies, because you also include the others somehow. And that I thought was a very interesting story to share.
Absolutely. So by including all the bodies, do we hook up where, say, for instance, you and your nephew have energy in common?
Yeah.
Is that what the change in his attitude?
I don't know exactly how it. I don't know. Exactly. So, for example, when we work with a body, we're working with a collective body, especially people in the collective we're very close to. Yeah, I remember a girl, a female therapist whose fear of dying from a near-drowning trauma when she was a child, after I worked with her, came back 2 days later and said when she went back home, her daughter came running up to her and said, Mom, do you know what I did today? What? I went on a boat ride with my with Dad, and her jaw dropped because this girl has also been very phobic to being on a boat, on a body.
That's so common, isn't it? That when we don't process something, then we have aversions to things. How much does where we identify have to do with this whole process? Because it seems like certainly in our culture here in the West, that advertising and all this stuff, it all circles around the physical body, the gross body, what it looks like, what you can do to make it look better, what it weighs, what car it drives. And beyond that, there just is nothing represented in the mass media. How much does that have to do with the difficulty we tend to have expanding beyond just the gross body?
Right, right. The science is responsible for this, right? The science said, in the West, science and religion, got into conflict very quickly. And in part, it has to do with the religion because it started to float theories like a flat Earth theory or the sun goes around the Earth theory. It started to say things that it had no business saying, right? And then the science got into the fight with it, and the science won, unfortunately, in certain ways. And so the science said you have to be able to measure, you have to be able to observe, but then all levels of the body are not measurable or perceivable. But however, our awareness can access these levels. But science said that the awareness is a function of the brain. So don't even look there. So we actually making up science made up its own fantasies, like the flat Earth theory that awareness is a function of the brain, and so that's how we ended up having a very limited concept of who we are. And then, of course, when that is the case, we want to do everything possible to prolong its life and make it look good and dress it well, etc. So,
And thus the fear of death.
Exactly, the fear of death. Fear of death. Exactly. The fear of death is not there when that's when you're all everything. There's no death to you, right? I mean, this body will die. That it will die is such a certainty, Gene Hackman just died at the age of 95 this morning. He actually appears to have taken his own life, along with his wife. In Santa Fe. But that comes for everybody. But but when we are connected to who we are on all levels, then we are not afraid of death. So we know that the soul that goes on. But even if the soul is in crisis, we know that the absolute collective body pure awareness is unperturbed by anything. So the person who embodies all four levels of a body is we say he's or she's enlightened, and they're free from suffering. That's the only freedom from suffering. And the souls, it appears, are moving toward that, not just getting better and better and with different abilities in the duality, but ultimately to reach the holy grail of understanding, being firmly planted in the awareness that I'm the whole, I'm the unchanging whole beneath the changing whole, of which my individual body just one speck. So
that is the ultimate evolution, isn't it?
That is the ultimate evolution, exactly. Enlightenment is the ultimate evolution. It's the end of evolution, actually, because evolution is all evolution is at the level of the changing body, changing collective body of the universe. All evolution. Universes, get destroyed along with solar systems and so on. So what are we evolving toward? So when we understand that the true evolution is like an individual evolving to the level of enlightenment, that one is indestructible whole of pure awareness that there is, then we are not on the path of life and death, right? I mean, that's what Buddhism says, Hinduism says, and so on. So that's true evolution. Enlightenment is a true evolution.
Well, we are just about to come to the end of the show, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what's your mission?
My mission in this life is to get as many people more embodied as possible, of more levels of their body as possible. It's a tall order, but I enjoy doing it, and I'm not, I get energy from it. So that will be my evolution. But on a personal level, it should be an enlightenment, God willing. So
it's just amazing how one thing leads to another in our lives, isn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Dr. SELVAM, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you very much, Gwilda. As usual, I thoroughly enjoyed your questions. That that just brings out the best in me, I think. So,
thank you. Our guest this hour has been Dr. Raja SELVAM, the author of The Practice of Embodying Emotions, a guide for improving cognitive, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. His website, integralsomaticspsychology.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. And everything we do is also available on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. Please be sure to enjoy our programs next time by joining us as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.
One people, one nation.